Welcome to Horrified Stories, where fear comes to life. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more spine-chilling tales. Let's start our today's story. I found an old diary buried in my backyard. It's right in itself. When I moved into my grandparents' old house, I thought it would be a quiet escape, nestled on the edge of a dense forest. The creaky two-story house exuded a rustic charm, its peeling paint and overgrown garden whispering of stories long forgotten. My grandparents had lived there for decades, and after they passed, the property sat empty until I decided to call it home. I was unpacking boxes in the living room one breezy autumn afternoon when my dog, Max, began barking at the backyard. His tail wagged furiously, but his growls carried an unease I couldn't ignore. Curious, I followed him outside, where he pawed at a patch of loose dirt near the edge of the garden. "What is it, Bud?" I asked, kneeling beside him. Max barked again, urging me on. I grabbed a small shovel from the shed and started digging. Just a few inches down, the tip of my shovel struck something solid. My pulse quickened as I unearthed an old, leather-bound diary. Its surface cracked and weathered from time. The diary felt heavier than it should have, almost as if it resisted being held. The initials E.W. were etched into the cover. My grandparents' names were Margaret and Henry. So who was he? W. Curiosity got the better of me, and I flipped it open. The first few pages were blank, but faint impressions of old writing could be seen if held at an angle. I decided to take it inside, clean it up, and figure out what secrets it held. That night, after a long day of unpacking, I curled up in the dimly lit living room with the diary. Max lay at my feet, his ears occasionally twitching toward the faint creaks and groans of the old house. When I opened the diary again, my heart skipped a beat. The once blank pages now had fresh writing on them. October 3rd, 1887. I don't know if anyone will ever find this, but if you do, heed my warning. Do not disturb the earth where this was buried. I stared at the words. My breath caught in my throat. The ink looked fresh, as if it had just been written. My hands trembled as I turned the page, but the rest remained blank. "Someone's messing with me," I muttered, though I wasn't sure who. The house was isolated. The nearest neighbor was half a mile away. Max growled softly, his hackles raised. His eyes darted to the darkened hallway leading to the bedrooms. "What is it, Bud?" I whispered, but he didn't respond, his growl deepening. I decided it was just my imagination running wild and put the diary on the coffee table. Exhaustion from the day's work tugged at me, and I fell asleep on the couch. I woke up to the sound of scratching. The room was cold, the kind of chill that seeps into your bones. Max was sitting upright, staring at the diary, which now lay open on the table. His growl was low and guttural, his eyes fixed on the pages as if something unseen moved them. When I picked up the diary, new words greeted me. October 4th, 1887. "You should not have taken this. It was buried for a reason. Return it now, or suffer the consequences." My heart pounded in my chest. The writing seemed to appear before my eyes, the ink forming letters as I watched. "Who's doing this?" I yelled, my voice echoing through the empty house. Max barked, the sound sharp and frantic. Suddenly, the lights flickered. A soft whisper filled the room, like a breeze slipping through a crack in the window. "Return it." I slammed the diary shut, my hands shaking. The air felt oppressive, heavy with an unseen presence. I glanced at Max, who was now pacing in circles, his whimpers a haunting melody in the tense silence. Deciding I'd had enough, I grabbed the diary and headed outside, intending to bury it where I'd found it. As I reached the spot in the garden, the ground seemed wrong. The earth was harder than before, the air colder. Just as I was about to start digging, a sudden gust of wind howled through the yard, carrying with it a voice that stopped me cold. Too late! I stumbled backward as the wind whipped around me, the voice echoing in my ears. The word "too late" carried an undeniable finality that chilled me to my core. Max barked and lunged at the air, his snarls directed at something I couldn't see. The diary lay heavy in my hands, almost pulsing as if alive. I wanted to bury it, to get rid of it, but something stopped me. Despite the fear clawing at my chest, I felt an inexplicable pull, a curiosity I couldn't resist. I clutched the diary and ran back inside, slamming the door behind me. Max followed, still growling and glancing nervously at the shadows in the corners of the room. As I locked the door, I noticed the lights flickering again. The house creaked and groaned, the sound eerily resembling footsteps. I sat on the couch, opening the diary once more, half expecting to see the pages filled with warnings. But instead, a new entry had appeared, the ink as fresh as before. October 5th, 1887. You cannot escape it now. The moment you touched this diary, you became part of the story. You will see what I saw, hear what I heard, and when the time comes, you will face what I faced. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? I whispered, as if the diary could answer. Max whimpered, his eyes darting to the hallway. The lights dimmed further, and the shadows in the room seemed to stretch and twist unnaturally. The house's once familiar creaks grew louder, more deliberate, as though someone or something was walking toward me. Suddenly, the air grew thick, and I felt an overwhelming sense of being watched. It began with a faint sound, a barely audible whisper. At first, it was indistinct, like the rustle of leaves, but then it grew louder, forming words that I couldn't ignore. Help us! The voice was layered, as if multiple people were speaking in unison. My heart pounded as I clutched the diary tighter. Who are you? What do you want? The whisper didn't answer, but instead grew louder, reverberating through the room. Max barked, his body stiff as he stood between me and the hallway. I turned to look and see. A figure stood in the shadows. It was tall, its form barely distinguishable from the darkness around it, its head tilted unnaturally, and its glowing eyes locked onto mine. Return it, the figure hissed, its voice a low, guttural growl. I stumbled to my feet, clutching the diary like a lifeline. I'll return it, I swear. The figure didn't move, but the air around it seemed to ripple. Max barked again, but this time his bark turned into a yelp as the shadow advanced, its presence oppressive and suffocating. I bolted toward the front door, but no matter how hard I pulled, it wouldn't budge. The windows were the same, their frames unyielding, as if the house itself conspired to trap me. The figure was closer now, its form becoming more distinct. Its face was featureless save for those piercing eyes, and its body seemed to flicker between solidity and shadow. Desperate, I opened the diary again. October 6th, 1887. There is no escaping it. It will come for you. It always does. But there is a way to delay it. You must find the other pages. The other pages, I muttered, my voice trembling. As if in answer, a sudden gust of wind tore through the room, scattering loose papers and knocking over a lamp. The diary's pages began to flip wildly before stopping on one in the middle. They are hidden where it all began. Find them, or it will consume you. The writing disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, leaving me staring at a blank page. Where it all began, I whispered. My grandparents, they'd lived in this house for decades. Could they have known about this? Max barked, pulling me out of my thoughts. His gaze was fixed on the basement door, which was now slightly ajar. No, I said, shaking my head. No way. But the pull of the diary was undeniable. Clutching it tightly, I grabbed a flashlight and made my way toward the basement. The stairs creaked under my weight as I descended, the beam of the flashlight cutting through the darkness. The basement smelled of damp earth and mildew, and the faint hum of an old boiler filled the air. As I reached the bottom, the door slammed shut behind me, plunging me into near-total darkness. The flashlight flickered, and for a moment, I thought I saw movement in the shadows. Stay calm, I whispered to myself, though my voice betrayed my fear. The diary grew warm in my hands, almost burning. Its weight seemed to guide me toward the far corner of the basement, where an old chest Saturday covered in dust. I hesitated, but the diary's pull was relentless. I knelt down, brushing off the thick layer of dust, and opened that chest. Inside were more pages, yellowed with age and covered in the same eerie handwriting. You found the beginning, but beware, for the closer you come to the truth, the stronger it will grow. The air grew colder, and a deep growl resonated from behind me. Slowly, I turned, the flashlight trembling in my grip. The shadowy figure was there, no longer confined to the edges of the room. It towered over me, its form more solid than before, and its eyes burned with an unnatural light. Max wasn't barking anymore. He was silent, his body pressed against the basement wall, his eyes wide with fear. "Why are you doing this to me?" I shouted, my voice cracking. The figure raised a hand, its long, shadowy fingers pointing directly at the diary. And then it spoke. "You opened the door. Now you must walk through it." The figure's words echoed in the cold, damp basement, their weight pressing down on me like a heavy fog. "You opened the door. Now you must walk through it." My hands shook as I clutched the diary and flashlight, the beam casting jittery shadows on the walls. Max was trembling against the far wall, his eyes wide, his whimpers soft but filled with terror. "I didn't mean to," I shouted, my voice cracking. "I just found it. I don't know what this is." The shadowy figure tilted its head, its glowing eyes narrowing. The oppressive atmosphere thickened, making it hard to breathe. The diary in my hands grew unbearably hot, forcing me to drop it. As it hit the ground, the pages flipped wildly, stopping at a new entry that hadn't been there before. "The door is open. You cannot undo what has been done, but you can uncover the truth. There is a way to end this, but it requires a sacrifice." I barely had time to process the words when the shadow lunged forward, its form stretching unnaturally as it closed the distance between us. I stumbled back, narrowly avoiding its grasp. Max barked wildly, his fear giving way to a desperate burst of courage. "Stay back," I yelled, but the figure seemed unfazed. It moved with a fluid, predatory grace, its elongated limbs reaching for the diary. On instinct, I grabbed the pages I'd found in the chest and held them up like a shield. The figure recoiled, its shape flickering violently as if the pages themselves were a threat. The diary and the scattered pages began to glow faintly, their light pulsating in rhythm with the figure's erratic movements. The whispers returned, louder now, filling the basement with a cacophony of voices. "Complete it," they urged. "Complete the diary and seal the door." I didn't understand what they meant, but I knew one thing. The diary and its pages were the key to whatever was happening. If I could find the rest of the pages, maybe I could put an end to this nightmare. But where were they? The figure let out a guttural snarl, its form coiling like smoke before surging toward me again. Without thinking, I shoved the glowing pages into the diary and slammed it shut. A deafening scream erupted from the figure, and it dissolved into the shadows, leaving behind a suffocating silence. I slumped against the wall, my chest heaving. Max ran to my side, pressing his trembling body against me. I stroked his fur, both of us shaken but alive. When I finally climbed out of the basement, the house felt different. The air was still heavy, but the immediate sense of danger had lifted. The diary, now glowing faintly, pulsed in my hands like a living thing. As I Saturday at the kitchen table, the next entry appeared before my eyes. October 7th, 1887. The pages are scattered across this cursed land. Each piece holds a fragment of the truth, but retrieving them will come at a cost. Beware, for the door is guarded by those who seek to keep it open. I closed the diary, my mind racing. The cursed land deed that mean the property, the woods surrounding the house. I thought of my grandparents. Had they known about this? Had they buried the diary to protect themselves? I needed answers. The next morning, after a restless night, I decided to search the house for clues. Max followed me closely, his ears perked, his tail low. Every creak of the floorboards set my nerves on edge, but I pressed on. In the attic, I found an old trunk filled with photographs and letters. Most of them were unremarkable, but one photograph caught my eye. It was a black and white image of my grandparents standing in front of the house, but behind them, barely visible in the shadows, was the outline of the same figure I'd seen in the basement. My hands trembled as I flipped the photograph over. Written on the back in my grandmother's delicate handwriting were the words, "We tried to keep it contained. If you found this, it's already too late. Forgive us." I sank to the floor, the weight of her words pressing down on me. They had known. They had been living with this horror all along. A sudden knock at the door startled me, breaking the suffocating silence. I wasn't expecting anyone, and the isolated location of the house made visitors rare. "Stay here, Max," I whispered, though he didn't look eager to follow me. I approached the door cautiously and peeked through the peephole. No one was there. Heart pounding, I opened the door a crack, only to find a small, weathered box sitting on the porch. There was no note, no sign of who had left it. I brought the box inside and placed it on the table, hesitating before opening it. Inside was another handful of pages, their edges frayed, their surface covered in the same eerie handwriting. "Each piece will bring you closer to the truth, but beware, for the guardians grow restless." As I read the words, the wind outside picked up, howling like a chorus of voices. The lights flickered, and Max began to growl again, his gaze fixed on the shadows gathering in the corners of the room. I had the sinking feeling that retrieving these pages was only the beginning. The wind outside battered the house, rattling the windows and filling the room with a haunting wail. Max's growl deepened, his body stiff as he stared into the darkened corners. I could feel it to the oppressive presence of something watching, waiting. The newly discovered pages lay on the table, their edges curling as if alive. The diary pulsed faintly beside them, its glow casting eerie patterns on the walls. I took a deep breath, picking up the pages and slipping them into the diary. As I closed it, the room seemed to shift, the air thickening with tension. The whispers returned. The door is opening. The guardians awaken. You must act quickly. Before I could react, a loud bang echoed through the house, as if something heavy had fallen upstairs. Max barked furiously, running toward the stairs before stopping abruptly, his body trembling. "Stay here, Max," I whispered, though I doubted he'd move an inch. Clutching the diary, I made my way up the creaking staircase, each step feeling like a journey into the unknown. The hallway was dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of the diary in my hands. The noise had come from my grandparents' old bedroom at the end of the hall. The door was ajar, swaying slightly as if pushed by an unseen hand. I stepped inside. The room was exactly as I remembered it from childhood visits: dusty furniture, faded wallpaper, and an antique mirror that dominated one wall. But now, the mirror's surface was clouded, swirling with shadows that seemed alive. The diary grew warmer in my hands, and a new entry appeared on its pages. "The guardians can't sense you. They are bound to the mirror, but they can cross the threshold if the door opens too wide. You must find the next fragment before it's too late." As I read the words, the mirror began to ripple like water. A hand pale and clawed emerged, followed by another. My breath caught in my throat as a figure pulled itself through the glass. Its face was grotesque, a patchwork of features that didn't belong together. Its eyes glowed with the same unnatural light as the shadow figure I'd seen before. I stumbled back, clutching the diary. The creature stepped forward, its movements jerky and unnatural. "Leave!" it hissed, its voice a raspy growl. I had no time to think. Acting on instinct, I opened the diary, hoping it would offer some guidance. The pages glowed brightly, and the creature recoiled, letting out a shriek that made my ears ring. The light seemed to push the creature back toward the mirror, but its resistance was fierce. The shadows in the room thickened, swirling around me like a storm. "Find the fragment," the whispers urged. "But where?" I scanned the room, my eyes falling on the antique chest in the corner. It was identical to the one I'd found in the basement. I ran to it, fumbling with the latch as the creature clawed its way toward me. Inside was another bundle of pages, their glow even stronger than before. I grabbed them and stuffed them into the diary. The moment the cover snapped shut, the light burst forth, flooding the room. The creature let out a final, deafening scream before dissolving into the shadows. The mirror cracked, splintering into a web of jagged lines, and the oppressive presence lifted. I collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air. When I returned downstairs, Max greeted me with a frantic wag of his tail, his relief palpable. I sat at the kitchen table, my hands shaking as I opened the diary again. The new pages had added more entries, their words filling the blank spaces. October 8th, 1887. The guardians are tied to the fragments. As you reclaim the pieces, their hold on this world weakens. But with each piece you gather, the danger grows. The final fragment lies where the curse began. Where the curse began. The words sent a chill down my spine. My grandparents' letters, the photograph, and the diary's warnings all pointed to the same place, the woods behind the house. I didn't wait. With Max by my side, I grabbed a flashlight and stepped into the backyard. The wind had died down, leaving an eerie stillness in its wake. The forest loomed ahead, its gnarled trees casting twisted shadows under the pale moonlight. The diary's glow guided me, its light flickering like a beacon. As I ventured deeper into the woods, the whispers grew louder, urging me forward. The air grew colder, and the trees seemed to close in around us. Max whimpered, but he stayed close, his loyalty unwavering despite his fear. At last, I reached a clearing. In the center stood an ancient stone altar, its surface etched with strange, unreadable symbols. The diary's glow intensified, illuminating the final fragment lying atop the altar. But I wasn't alone. The shadow figure from the basement and the grotesque guardian from the mirror stood at the edges of the clearing, their glowing eyes fixed on me. As I approached the altar, the diary grew unbearably hot, its light flaring brightly. The figures snarled, their forms flickering like dying flames. The whispers reached a crescendo, their voices blended into a single command. Take the fragment and seal the door. I grabbed the final pages, and the ground beneath me trembled. The figures lunged, their forms dissolving into pure darkness as they raced toward me. With shaking hands, I placed the pages into the diary and slammed it shut. The light that burst forth was blinding, a radiant force that swept through the clearing like a wave. The figures let out agonized screams as they were pulled into the void, their forms unraveling into nothingness. The diary in my hands grew cold and silent, its glow fading. The whispers stopped, replaced by a deafening silence. As the forest returned to its stillness, I stood there, clutching the diary, unsure of what I'd just done. The altar crumbled into dust, its symbols fading into obscurity. The curse had been contained, but at what cost? The silence in the forest was profound, almost suffocating. The diary, now cold and lifeless in my hands, felt heavier than ever. Max pressed against my leg, his trembling lessening but his eyes still darting around nervously. The crumbled altar and dissipated figures left no trace of the horrors that had just occurred, yet the weight of their presence lingered. I had the final fragment. The diary was complete, and the whispers had stopped. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Back at the house, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the diary. Max curled up at my feet, exhausted from the ordeal. The room was unnervingly still, the oppressive energy gone, replaced by an eerie calm. I opened the diary one last time. The pages shimmered faintly, their ink swirling into a new entry. October 9th, 1887. You have done what I could not. The fragments are whole, and the door is sealed for now. But the curse is not destroyed. It cannot be destroyed. It will rest dormant until the next unwitting soul stumbles upon its remnants. This is the price we pay for meddling with forces beyond our understanding. The words filled me with both relief and dread. I had contained the curse, but it was only temporary. The diary's glow faded completely, and the air around me seemed lighter. I flipped to the first page, hoping to find answers about the origins of this nightmare. Instead, a single word appeared, scrawled in large, jagged letters. Run. A loud crash shattered the silence, and the light in the house flickered violently. Max sprang to his feet, barking furiously at the front door, which shook as if something was trying to break through. "No," I whispered, backing away. "I sealed it. I sealed the door." The diary in my hands began to heat up again, the faintest glow returning to its cover. The whispers, once subdued, roared back to life, their voices frantic and overlapping. "You delayed it, but you didn't end it. The guardians are gone, but something stronger remains. It knows." The door burst open, and a wave of cold air swept through the house. Standing in the doorway was a new figure, taller and more menacing than the ones before. Its form was shrouded in darkness, its eyes blazing like twin suns. "You meddled with what you do not understand," it said, its voice deep and resonant, shaking the very walls of the house. I clutched the diary tightly, my mind racing. "What do you want from me? I did what the diary told me to do." The figure stepped forward, and with each step, the air grew heavier, colder. "The diary is not yours to keep," it said. "It belongs to the door. Return it." I hesitated, torn between fear and defiance. The diary had caused nothing but terror and destruction, but it had also been my only weapon against the curse. "What happens if I give it back?" I asked, my voice trembling. The figure tilted its head, a sinister smile spreading across its shadowy face. "The cycle will continue. The curse will find another, but you will be free." Free, the word hung in the air, tantalizing and cruel. I glanced down at Max, his frightened eyes pleading with me to make the right choice. Slowly, I stepped forward, holding out the diary. The figure reached out, its long, clawed fingers brushing against the cover. "Wait," I said, pulling it back slightly. "If I give this to you, promise me it won't come back to this house. Promise me it won't hurt anyone I care about." The figure hesitated, its burning eyes narrowing. "The curse does not bargain, but for now, your wish will be granted." It reached for the diary again, and this time, I let it take it. The moment the diary left my hands, a blinding light filled the room. The figure dissolved into the light, taking the diary with it. The whispers ceased, the air warmed, and the oppressive energy lifted entirely. It was over, or so I thought. Weeks passed, and life began to return to normal. The house felt safe again, almost peaceful. Max stopped growling at shadows, and I started sleeping through the night. The diary and its horrors felt like a distant memory. But late one evening, as I was settling into bed, I noticed something strange. A small patch of dirt in the backyard had been disturbed, as though someone or something had been digging. My heart sank. I knew better than to investigate. Whatever had been buried there, it wasn't my concern anymore. As I turned away from the window, I caught a faint whisper, barely audible but unmistakable. "The door is never truly closed." And with that, I turned off the light, pretending not to hear, hoping the curse had moved on for now. If you like this story, don't forget to hit the like button, share and subscribe the channel. Help us grow. Thanks for watching.